30 Years After by Donald Watson, taken from the autumn 1974 issue of The Vegan. As one who had much to do with the formation of the Vegan Society, I have been asked to subscribe some notes for this issue celebrating 3 decades of the movement's existence. I feel privileged to do so, but of course I cannot speak on behalf of the other founder members, nor are my views necessarily those of the Society's officers today. 30 years is long enough for one to assess how the vegan idea has worked itself out in the rough and tumble of life. Our original precepts were simple. We sought to show that man need not be dependent upon animals, and that commercial pressures made the use of animals inevitably cruel. We believe that Spencer was right when he said that man's treatment of animals and of himself bear a constant relationship, so that we too must suffer from exploitation. We also believe that man's natural food should consist of selections from the plant kingdom, properly grown and consumed as near as possible in their natural form. Has psychological need or further consideration led us to depart from the simplicity of this philosophy? Would a system of benevolent symbiotic association, where it might be arranged, be a higher ethic for us to follow than non-interference? It would be surprising in so fundamental an opposition to orthodox living if after 30 years some had not departed from their rigid adherence to principle, while others had remained faithful, irrespective of all other considerations. Viewing the London-based scene from my home 300 miles north, I feel that many will wish to join with me in thinking those who have developed the movement into one of an international repute. Special gratitude is due to those who have performed year in, year out the unglamorous task of making thousands of inquiries to check the contents of products, and to those who have shared the technically difficult job of producing and marketing a substitute for animals' milk. Stimulated by increasing demand, commercial firms with their great financial resources may improve the quality and extend the range of plant milks, but this cannot detract from the honour due to pioneers. Their work has already made it easier for the rest of us to meet the problems of humane living. Veganism today remains as dynamic an idea as when it was introduced. Its implications are vitally linked to ethics, health, economics, aesthetics, agriculture, ecology and hygiene, and the case for it has been strengthened by the obscene introduction of factory farming and also by the discovery that cholesterol in dairy produce and eggs might be contributing significantly to the increased incidence of coronary thrombosis and other diseases. Pressure of increasing world population has made it immoral to take protein foods from underdeveloped countries where people are starving and feed them to animals in more affluent countries where greedy people are killing themselves through overnourishment. The vegan and vegetarian movements alone seem to be condemning this outrage, and of the two, the vegan movement is in a stronger position to criticise. The health problems suffered by some early vegans showed us that following man's dependence on animal foods for many centuries, not everyone could manage without taking vitamin B12. It was a difficulty that could not have been anticipated in 1944, for at that time the vitamin was unknown and its absence was not made apparent for several years. Those who suffered could hardly have done so for a greater cause, for following the vegan experience, the discovery of this vitamin and its cheap manufacture could well prove to be one of the greatest discoveries in history, saving millions of lives in decades ahead when, if present population trends continue, man's food must come more and more directly from plants. A further health problem, which some early vegans had, and which some may still have, was a circuitry one, caused by the attempt to eliminate all common salt from their diet. An article by W.S. James in the Vegan News No. 3, May 1945, gave 5 reasons why we need common salt in our diet, one being its vital role in muscular action. The inclusion of a normal amount of sea salt in our diet brought almost magical cures. It would be unfortunate if vegan diet is still being blamed for this condition when the cure in some cases is so simple and vegan principles are not involved. The greatest problem which strict vegan practice presents to some of us today is the social one, especially to those in the vegetarian movement who seek through our contacts to persuade others to take the first step. We choose to sacrifice some of our personal consistency for this other related cause. We may be wrong. It is a point that can be argued. In some cases, a yielding of principle has to be made to make a school or university feeding possible, or to give children their right to a full acquaintance with more orthodox friends, or to meet the demands of landladies or marriage partners. Vegan practice is much easier for some than others. Any broad-minded moralist must concede that personal consistency is but one of the many factors involved. Of course, the movement will always need those who, through great strength of character or favoured position, can maintain their strict witness. It should, however, I think, be accepted that in feeding, slight departures from strict vegan practice are not so serious as departures from vegetarian practice. For while eating any meat involves killing an animal, this is not so in the case of small quantities of dairy produce or eggs. A further debating point, I would debate that personally, Donald. A further debating point that cannot be avoided is that many vegan foods today are grown up with the help of dried blood and bone meal, and growers' methods of protecting their crops may leave much to be desired. The sincere vegan cannot help all this. It is certainly not an argument against veganism, but one to illustrate the problems facing those who think that veganism or any other ideal is easy to achieve. Veganism today offers much towards the cause of human regeneration and animal emancipation, but it still involves some physical risk if the conditions are not right. The more restricted the diet, the more careful we must be to see that everything necessary is there. In a vegan world, there must be an abundance and variety, and no necessary food factors would be missing for anyone, but that is a long way off. In the meantime, there must be much swimming against the tide of this savage world, and while this can produce great strength of character in some cases, it can reduce others, equally sincere and convinced to neurotics, and these are no good to any movement. Each must decide how he or she can best fight and serve the general cause. Perhaps we do best if we try to understand personal difficulties and weaknesses, not least our own, rather than notch up our asceticism in fatal holier-than-thou attitude. Fully humane living is not possible for any of us in this imperfect world, but by trying to follow the ideals and advice of the Vegan Society, we can now travel further along the road than anyone has ever done before, and that is no mean achievement.